Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
This group of friends faced a whistling, screaming demon in Appalachian territory, and it genuinely spooked me. I got this story from my...
I just saw her eyes get really wide, and she looked nervous, and she disappeared. And I've never...
Do something with it.
It's just money coming to me easily. Money coming in and needing me. Money coming in repeatedly. Money coming, it's just money coming. It's just money coming to me frequently. Money coming in to be with me. Money coming in secretly. Money coming, it's just money coming. It's just money coming to me always. Money coming in all day. Money coming in all paid. Money coming, it's just money coming. It's just money coming to me frequently. Money coming in to be with me.
Hey y'all, welcome back to All Things Jenny. I'm Jenny and I'm back with another spooky story time, and I hope you guys are ready because this one, it's so good and it's actually pretty long. So I hope you guys have your popcorn ready, whatever it is that you eat or drink or smoke.
Alright, so we're back at it for part 2 of my haunting ghost stories. All of the events transpired from October 2011 until March 2014. Like I said in the previous video, after the homeowner passed away, a lot of the energy turned very heavy, very hostile, and I felt like a lot of it was directed towards me. So after that happened, I started having very vivid nightmares. They felt very real, very harmful, and every single time I had them, these were weekly, multiple times a week. I would wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and I started experiencing sounds and feeling things in my room after that night. And what I mean by that is waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning, the room is pitch black, and I would hear just... Mind you, I had carpet in my room and I would literally hear dragging feet stomps in my room, starting from my door that was closed all the way to where it would get to the head of my bed, and I could just feel a presence there, and I would just hide under the covers. I didn't want to look at it. I would pray and hope that whatever it was would go away. And after that, that occurred several times where I would hear that dragging just sound walking towards me. Eventually it got into my bed. Whatever it was, I literally felt the weight of it lay next to me and into my bed. And again, I would just pray and hope that it would be over. Sorry to get emotional or my voice gets shaky. It's just that was a moment in time that I was just so scared and I feared for what would happen to me at the time. And it happened a couple times where whatever that was would get into my bed and I would just pray and pray and pray until one time it rolled over onto me and I just felt an immense pressure on my chest, just squeezing and literally indenting me into the bed, and I could not breathe. So then that happened a few times and I would just scream, and my parents would run into my room, and the moment they did, whatever it was would just leave. Like, oh, the weight would just be lifted from my chest, and I noticed that whatever it was only ever happened in my room, and if I had any company over, nothing would ever happen. So I was either always at one of my friends' house sleeping over because I did not want to sleep in my room, or I would have them sleeping over at my house and then nothing would ever happen. And then I remember one time I had my girlfriend over, my parents were upstairs, and I was washing dishes while she was behind me just hanging out, and I had my hair in a claw clip. So I was just washing dishes, we were talking, and all of a sudden I feel hands behind me on my claw clip and it just pushes my head down. And I was like, girl, quit playing. And she just looked so scared. And she said, that wasn't me. And I looked at her, I said, what do you mean it wasn't you? She said, that wasn't me. Whatever pushed you just now was not me. And I could see the genuine fear in her eyes. And I turned off the dishes, we ran upstairs, and we went into our room. And you know, we kind of laugh about it now, but legitimate, whatever it was. I felt hands and it pushed my head down. Afterwards, we had an instance where my dad was helping out one of his soldiers who was going through a divorce, so he came to stay at our house until he got his stuff gathered and situated during that time. He was at our house for 2 days before he told my dad, "I cannot stay at your house anymore." He said, "I might sound crazy, but ever since I was little, I see spirits." And he said, "This house has a lot of spirits. The majority are good, but there's a few that are very malicious. And the only reason nothing bad has happened to you guys is because those good spirits are fending them off, but they're getting weak. You guys need to leave." So at that point, he just confirmed all of the suspicions we had. And like I said, the energy was getting a lot darker, a lot heavier, a lot more hostile. After he left, I had this one very vivid dream that I remember to this day. I woke up in my dream down the street. So I was walking, kind of jogging back to my house. Everything was dark. Everything was deathly still. Not a single cricket, bird, nothing. It's midnight. The moon was out. I run into my house and there's candles lit everywhere, just like if it was a ceremony. And then I see what I can only describe as a stereotypical demon that you see: the hooves, the red skin, the horns. And he said, "I've been waiting for you." And I just bolt upstairs. He chases me and he grabs me in my room and he grabs me by the neck and he stares at me and he just says, "I finally got you." And I wake up, I can't breathe. I have a panic attack. Again, it's 2 or 3 in the morning. I tell my parents about it. So at this point, my mom is dead set on getting the house cleansed, getting some holy water. But before that happens, they're out of the house. I'm in the house alone again. And I have my room door shut at this point. I don't want anything entering my room. I have my dog, and all of a sudden I hear that scratching again, except it's very persistent. It's very intense. And I just yell at it. I say, "Leave me alone. Leave me alone." And the doorknob starts rattling and the door just bursts open. I get up, I shut the door, lock it. And then all of a sudden, the scratching stops, the door handle stops. You know, I've shut the door at this point, and we have one of these. This isn't the one from the house, but it was an old metal ceiling fan like this. And all I hear is this big metal crashing sound. It sounds like a car crash. And at this point, I'm trembling. I call my parents and I said, "Can you please come home?" At this point, my parents come home, and when I finally get out of my room, speaking with my parents on the phone, and I know they've come home and it's not spirits mimicking them or anything like that, I come out of my room and we look at that ceiling fan and it is fully dented in. Whatever it was, bashed it in with one punch or throw, whatever it did. And at that point, you know, we had the holy water, we fully cleansed the house, and everything died down. I didn't have the vivid nightmares anymore. Nothing was bothering me in bed or doing anything like that anymore. The only thing that was still there was, I guess, the little trickster spirit moving stuff around or hiding stuff, the stomping up the steps, and the shadow figure up front. After we fully cleansed the house and had someone come in and properly cleanse it using holy water everywhere and making sure to basically cleanse every couple of days, we didn't have any issues for the last few months of being there. And then we left March 2014. My dad got orders. He went to Texas. I was already in college, so I got an apartment in a different area in that town. And by far, that is the absolute worst experience I've ever had with anything paranormal.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
There are so many different stories that I'd love to tell you guys, but this one is probably one of the most scariest. So I don't live with them now. About 6 years ago, my son and I, we moved back in to my parents' home. This was the home that I grew up in as a child, and it was built in the 1920s. No one ever passed away on the property, in the house, whatever. Nothing crazy ever happened. It's just an older house in really nice area in the suburbs. Yeah, there's not much history about it, really. Growing up, my mom and I always had just like either weird dreams or we thought that we would see something and sorry, my cat. We thought that we would see something and it just wasn't there, both separately and together as well. So when I moved back in, I moved into the attic, which was actually converted into a bedroom. It was just a long, narrow room. It's pretty large, but it was narrow and just long. And then at the end of the attic, there's a big closet. It could be like a walk-in closet type of situation, but it doesn't have a door. Yeah, my dad would just put a cloth or, like fabric over it because we just stored a whole bunch of crap back there. One of the reasons why I hated the attic growing up is because it just was kind of dark up there. And also that area, the closet area, was just really weird. Like it would always give me a weird vibe. I've only been into that area a handful of times. So this is important to know. Like the way that you would get into the attic is, so you have like the front door. Right at the front door, there's steps going up. So you go up the steps. To the left is a bedroom. I believe at the time it was my sister's room. And then to the right, sorry, left and rights, to the right would be the attic. Now to get up there, you would have to climb up like 3 really short steps and then kind of like crawl in there or hold on to the sides and step in there. It wasn't a full length door. Yeah, it was just really, it was a weird setup, but the door was small and there was always a draft. And so my dad he put like a latch hook sort of situation at the top. And then on the bottom, he put a deadbolt. So whoever, if one of the kids, we all took turns having the attic as our room at one point. And so in order to keep it closed and stop the draft from coming in, he put a deadbolt on the door. So it's on the bottom of the door and he drilled a hole into the floor and you would just secure it pretty much into the floor. So now that that's all out of the way, one night I was sleeping, everyone in the house was sleeping. My dad was at work. And my mom calls me around 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, what the heck? She's right down the hall. Why is she calling me? I pick it up and she says, hey, is Jeremiah down here? Jeremiah's my son. He was sleeping right next to me. I look over and he was right next to me. And she says, and I said, no, he's right here. Why? And she said, because it looks like that there's a kid in the hallway, like in my doorway. And I said hi, but they're still standing there. Are you sure Jeremiah is in the room with you? So I'm like, yes, he is here with me. I asked, was it one of my siblings? And she said, no, they were way too short to be, my other siblings who were they're just a few years younger than me. So they're much taller than what she was describing. So after she confirmed that it was none of my siblings and my son was right there, we were both just pretty freaked out. I didn't go downstairs to check on my mom. I was just like, close your door. I don't know, maybe call dad and see if he can come home from work. But my door was locked, secured. I was like, nothing, don't come up here. So as soon as we say goodnight, she's like, good night. I'm like, good night, love you. See ya in a few hours because it was already morning. Right as soon as that happened, my door, the door that is bolted, just swung open and hit the wall behind it. And so it's just like if you just take a door, swing it open, and it hits the wall behind it. It hit the wall so hard. Of course, it caught me off guard, so I just jumped up And I did run over to the door because I was thinking, okay, maybe my mom ran up here and I don't know, she was the Hulk and just pulled on the door really hard. But no, there was no one behind the door at all. No one. Everyone was still sleeping. My mom, she was still awake because we just got off the phone. She heard and she called me back, and I was like, Mom, the door just swung open. And she was like, What do you mean the door swung open?
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Boy, have I been waiting for a trend like this, because everything that I'm about to tell you are true events that transpired to me and my family from October 2011 until March 2014. So this is the house in question, and I was able to find it online. We rented it through a rental company. After about a week of us moving in, cleaning up, we get a call from this lady who's actually the original owner of the house, and she asked us, hey, can I please stop by to see it one last time? So of course we didn't think anything of it. We're like, of course, stop by, come see it. So it turns out this lady was very sickly. I don't remember what illness she had, but she was leaving for treatment and the prognosis wasn't looking good. And she was telling us different memories she had with her family in that house. And once we get into my room, it was green and it had this cute little picket fence floral. This is the only picture I have. It's not that good, but it had little bunnies and stuff. And she said, please, if you aren't going to change anything in this house, do not touch this room. I hand painted this mural with my daughter who passed away. Which at the time we didn't think anything of it. I had no plans of changing it, plus it's a rental. We didn't want to change anything about it. Now, once this lady left is when things started to happen. Now, everything that I'm about to tell you, as it happened, it continued to happen until we left this house. So at this point, we're about 2 weeks into living here, and I'm coming back home from school. I run up the stairs to the right. There's this office space, and the door was slightly open and the light was on. So I just turned off the light and closed the door, and I go to my mom's room. We talk about our day, and then we're gonna walk down the hallway, and we just stop. We stare at each other because I had told her about the light. The door again was open, and the light was on. So at this point, we kind of just walk over, we step into the room. There's nothing in there. We said, oh, how weird. Turn off the light, close the door. Now from here on out, there's little sprinklings of this light is on, this door is randomly open, after you had closed it or turned off that light. Nothing crazy. After that, about a month or two in, I had a little miniature pinscher. Her name was Susie. She would start barking all the way at the bottom level towards the garage. Now, the way the house was laid out is that there was a 2-car garage. You would go in and there was a second living room, go up some steps, kitchen, living room, dining room, and then you would go up the stairs and it was the 4 bedrooms and the bathrooms upstairs. But all of a sudden, Susie would start aggressively going downstairs and barking at the garage door. We didn't pay any mind to this because we thought, oh, maybe there's a lizard or some sort of animal or whatever in the garage. Until one day, my dad started seeing this creepy crawl space in the garage. The door would be open. Now, this happened about twice. Mind you, this is weeks, maybe months apart. So we don't really think anything of it. Maybe it's a raccoon that crawled out of it. I don't know. Until one day, Susie had been barking at this door once or twice a week. And one day she goes downstairs. Mind you, all the lights are off. She's barking so aggressively at the garage door, just going at it. And all of a sudden we hear a yelp, just and she comes bolting up the stairs, goes all the way up the second set of stairs, and goes into my parents' room under the covers in her bed. At this point, we all look at each other and we're like, what the hell? We check her, she's perfectly fine. And then from here on forth, she still barks, but she would bark from the steps in the kitchen going down into that second living room. She would bark from there. She never went back to the garage door again. Then the next thing that started happening is we would hear just stomping up and down the stairs. And we would be like, what the hell is going on? And a lot of the times it was happening when everyone was in the house. So we were just excusing it as, oh, it's my dad, oh, it's my mom, or my mom would think it's me, and vice versa. Until one day, it happened to all of us individually when we were by ourselves. So I would hear stomping going up and down the stairs, but I would be home alone. That continued on, and we said, oh, okay, well, I guess there's spirits in the house. Whatever. There's nothing you can do about it. We didn't feel any negative energy or anything, so we, again, paid it no mind. And then, I guess we must have had a little trickster spirit. All of a sudden, things would start missing and then reappearing. So let's say all of a sudden you open the drawer in the kitchen and all of the spoons are gone, and they would be missing for 2 or 3 days, and then you would open it back up and they would just magically reappear. So this happened the whole time we were there. You know, we didn't pay any mind to it. It's innocent, whatever. After the first year is when things started getting progressively more intense, more aggressive. I would be home alone after school in my bed doing homework, either with the door closed or the door open, but I started hearing scratching on my door, just a scratching sound. And, you know, I thought maybe it's Susie trying to get into the room. Until one day, those scratching noises were happening while I was home alone, and the door was closed, and Susie was sitting next to me. You know, I would just wait at that point until my parents got home from work and then get out of my room. Never any scratch marks or claw marks or anything. Soon after that, I started experiencing a lot of seeing shadows in the hallway or feeling like something was watching me while I was taking a shower. And then I talked to my mom about it, and she said she saw the shadows too. My dad eventually started seeing them, and it was always of a man in a suit. He had a top hat and he had a suitcase, and you would only ever see his shadow in the top hallway, or you would see his shadow while you were taking a shower, and you would open the curtain and there would be nothing there. And that was the absolute worst, just feeling and knowing you were being watched. Then one day, again, I'm by myself, my parents still aren't home from work, and I'm upstairs in my room with Susie, and mind you, the garage is directly under, so whenever someone comes home, you can kind of feel a slight shake and hear the garage door open and close very clearly. So at this point, you know, Susie hears the garage door open. She goes downstairs all excited to say hi to my parents or whoever it is coming home. I'm still doing homework, so I'm not focused too much on it. And I literally hear the garage door open. I hear my mom with ruffled bags, and she's like, Joelle, come down here. Help me with the groceries. I'm like, okay. I go downstairs. My mom isn't in the kitchen. I just find Susie staring with her head little cocked over at the garage door. And at this point I start shaking. I'm like, Mommy? No answer. I open the garage door. It's empty. The garage is closed. No one is home. At this point, I bolt it upstairs, lock myself in my room, and I do not come out of my room until my parents come home. After this occurs once or twice more, and then after that I completely ignore it until my mom physically comes into my room and says, hey, help me with the groceries, because that freaked me out and I'm not trying to mess with anything like that. Not for me. And then one day, all of us are home. I'm in my room, my mom's in her room, my dad's downstairs in the living room watching TV, and all of a sudden, all of the lights start flickering on and off. All of the hallway coat jackets, all of the closets open up, and stuff just starts getting thrown out of it. Now this is the closet you could see directly in front of the living room that my dad saw just rip open, and just everything was closing out. What the fuck? At this point, heavy, intense, dark energy was flowing through, and a few days later we get a call from the rental agency letting us know that the lady who owned the house passed away that night. I'm literally getting goosebumps. And then after this, right here in that door, my mom had a little half curtain. After that day, there was this big dark shadow of a man just standing in front of the door. At first, I thought maybe it was just my reflection or something, but all of us saw it. And one day, out of curiosity, we were like, what is that? Maybe it's a trick of the mind. So all three of us opened the door, no shadow, close it, full figure, shadow figure of a tall, big man just standing in front of the door. Now this shadow, it did nothing to us. It didn't feel any negative presence of it, but it was there until the day we left that house. Like I said, after we found out the homeowner had passed away, a lot of the activities started ramping up. It was almost every single day, and at this point it started getting more aggressive, but it was definitely more towards me. I was the one experiencing the most. My parents saw a few things, but I was experiencing a lot of the hostility. And I don't have enough time, so I have to do a part 2.
Entirely true. I'll go first.
I've got one for you. So when I was 19, I moved into this house after a breakup, and I found this room on Facebook Marketplace. This girl was selling her room or whatever, subleasing it, and it was, I think, $250 a month, and I was like, yeah, let's go. So I moved into this place, and it is a very old home. It was made out of local stone, and it was on this block that all the houses were made out of local stone, and if they weren't made out of local stone, they would not still be standing. I'll just say that. They're very old. So this house had been converted into separate apartments, and I was living in a room that you had to walk through a bathroom to get to, and this room was also connected to another bedroom, but we just put like furniture in front of it, so it kind of felt like a bedroom. So that's where I was staying. And the first night that I was sleeping there, I was woken up out of a dream, don't know what I was dreaming about, and I saw this woman just like hovering over me, looking at me. And I looked at her for a few seconds, and when she realized I was looking at her, I just saw her eyes get really wide, and she looked nervous, and she disappeared. And I've never really given that a lot of credit because I was waking up out of a dream. You know, sometimes you just see things. I don't know. But then the next day when I was leaving to go do something else, you know, I was opening my door, going through the bathroom to get out of the house. I swore that I saw someone like crouched in the corner of the shower. And I thought that was weird. But because the night before and how I was like, that was probably just a dream. I'm probably just paranoid right now. I'm not going to give it any credit. So time goes on, right? And I get a cat. Love the little thing. She's precious. And it gets to a point where, you know, I'm 19. I'm a full-time college student. Her food was more expensive than mine, and I couldn't afford to keep her anymore. So one of my friends took her, and I noticed as soon as she was gone that things started to get a little hairy. Like from that day forward till I moved out, every single day something happened. Didn't matter if it was daytime, nighttime, or anything. But that little figure that I had seen crouched in the shower was a little boy. And he was very upset that my cat was not there anymore. So what did he do? He terrorized me. Like, it got to the point where I had to rearrange my room so when I would wake up and roll over in the middle of the night, I wouldn't see him because he would stand in the corner where I had my cat's stuff as if like protesting that she was gone. And that was every single night from that point on. During the day, I would have hangers and clothes fly out of my closet. Did not matter. Door would open, closet and clothes would just fall out. And it became a normal thing, you know, like I would see him and I wouldn't think twice about it because I didn't want to engage. I didn't want to encourage it. So what I would do is I wouldn't say anything. If he was really scaring me, I'd go to someone else's house. I just dip out because, you know, like child spirits, you don't really know if it's a real child or not. I think this was a real child because he was just throwing tantrums and taking it all out on me. The scariest thing that ever happened with him, though, was I was doing laundry one day. I guess my cat had probably been gone for a couple months now, and I'd become adjusted to seeing him. It wasn't anything new. And I was folding my laundry on my bed, and I watched him crawl out of my closet, look at me, and crawl underneath my bed. It actually makes me sick to my stomach, even thinking about it, because I don't know if you've seen any scary movie. It was horrifying. So yeah, I dipped. I didn't come back for like 2 days because that was horrifying. And before I left, though, I did get on my hands and knees and look under the bed to see if he was there. One of the bravest moments of my life, he wasn't. And at that point, I was already done. I didn't care that I didn't see him. I was done. So, I mean, my laundry was clean. It didn't matter. I dipped. And from that point on, it never got that bad again, but he was almost always in the shower when I would be leaving. And the way that our bathroom was set up, like the mirror faced the shower, and there would be times where like I would be getting ready. I'm crying. I would be getting ready and I would see his little stinking head pop up in the mirror. And I had to start sleeping with a face mask because I would roll over in the middle of the night and he would either be in the corner of my cat's stuff or he would be at the end of my bed or he'd be in another corner. Like it was something straight out of Insidious. And I'd say that's one of the worst ghost stories I have at that house, definitely, because I never saw that woman again. There was one figure I kept seeing in the kitchen, but I never saw their face. They only stood with their back to me. So, I think our timelines were just crossing or something. But no one else in the house that lived there ever had any encounters that I know of. And yeah, so that's how I was terrorized by a little child, ghost, spirit, for having to get rid of a cat, for being poor, essentially.
This group of friends face a whistling, screaming demon in Appalachian territory, and it genuinely spooked me. I got the story from a first-person retelling of an eyewitness account that they had. We don't know the name of this person, so I'm just going to call him Mark. Mark tells a story about the encounter his group had with this unknown humanoid figure that stood about 8 to 9 feet tall while camping on the Montour Trail in western Pennsylvania. Mark and his friends go to set up camp at the Boggs campsite. Most of the group members were ill-prepared. They mostly just brought recreational supplies. Other than Mark, he brought like a couple blankets and was actually dressed warm. Because of this, Mark assumes that they're going to be standing by the fire all night, and he soon realizes that it will become his responsibility to go get the firewood most of the time. When they got there around 3 p.m., it wasn't too cold, but it was expected to get into the 40s that night. They spent several hours just eating, drinking, and enjoying some music, hanging out with each other. They were quickly burning through all the nearby wood, so Mark was having to go further and further out each time. By 12:30 a.m., Mark had to go so far that he was losing sight of camp, but being 6'5", he wasn't too worried about being alone in the woods. That's when he heard the first whistle. He said it sounded like someone breathing through a snorkel. At this point, he's just like,
To bend the wind.
Between 1 and 2 a.m., the rain is replaced with snow, and so Mark is yet again out getting firewood. On his way back this time, the whistling is heard again, and it's even louder this time, and he's starting to really notice how weird it is. The wind hasn't picked up despite the whistling being louder, and he thinks that maybe it's just changed direction or something. He keeps walking until he's able to start hearing faint music coming from his camp. As Mark reaches the top of the hill, right before he goes down to the campsite, he hears loud noises echoing behind him. He assumes a tree fell or maybe a deer knocked something over, so he turns around, shines his flashlight everywhere, but he can't see anything that's happened, and nothing's fell, and he just doesn't know where it came from. He's back at camp now, so it doesn't really matter to him. He just forgets all about it. By 4:30 a.m., everyone's so cold that they all decide to go with him to gather some wood. They split up, naturally. Mark ended up further away from the camp than he originally intended to, looking for some wood that was not fast-burning pine. And the whistling starts again. This time he could tell it was coming from his left, so he turned his flashlight in that direction just to see what was there. Nothing was there. It stopped briefly, then picked up again, seeming like it was coming from a different direction this time. This time in front of him, a little bit to his right. He's thinking maybe the wind is just catching in the branches just right to make this odd specific sound, so he tries to ignore it and goes back to doing what he's doing. As he's returning, the noises seem to follow him. They're coming from his left, his right, and seem to always be just behind him. He keeps turning his flashlight in all directions. He's still not seeing anything. He's thinking like, whatever. Then there was just one sharp whistle and it paused. That's when he heard it, a voice saying, "Damn, it's cold out here." Ugh. At this point, Mark is assuming it's his friend, specifically one that he calls R. Couldn't locate R with his flashlight, and he starts yelling out, like, where are you at? Mark then hears a branch snap and notices a movement and thinks that R is now in a different location. Aims his flashlight, no sign of him. He thinks maybe he's hiding behind a bush or a tree. Mark calls out to him, R. No response. He's thinking that maybe he's trying to scare him, but he's still worried that he might get lost on his way back to camp, so he goes, I'm going back to camp. He shines his flashlight around one last time, and Mark sees something dart into the bushes about 40 feet from where he had heard what he thought was R. He yells, I see you, big man, grab some wood and come back. He waits a few more seconds before he turns around and starts walking back. Suddenly, he's hearing whistling again. No matter how fast he moved, it seemed to always be right behind him. So he decides to sit under a tree and wait for R to return, thinking eventually he's gonna have to walk back past him. I'm guessing he's still assuming that the whistling is R. The whistling remained consistent, and it started to move in like an odd circular pattern around him. Appearing in one spot, then shifting to another. Mark is still thinking it's the wind because of the way it's moving around oddly. He's like, that's the only logical explanation. I'd be trying to tell myself that too, to be honest. He's still looking around for R, periodically turning on his flashlight, looking around, and he noticed that weirdly the whistling stops whenever he's looking around. For like a second or two, and it'd be eerily quiet. Gets up, brushes the dirt off, thinks, surely he's gonna be coming soon. He starts walking back towards the camp again, and that's when he notices something move out of the corner of his eye. Scanned the area, saw nothing. Took a few more steps, saw another flicker of movement. The whistling starts again. As the whistling keeps being accompanied with like brief movements in the bushes, like he starts to pick up his pace. First a speed walk, then a jog. He's thinking R is usually pretty sluggish, and he doesn't think that he'd be able to move that fast, so he gets pretty freaked and this time dives under a bush. Silence again. He's thinking, is there a coyote stalking me, maybe? His flashlight's off, so he's letting his eyes adjust. He tries to peek out from the bushes, and he hears persistent whistling again. He waited for a little while, and that's when he heard it speak, this time in a distorted imitation of his own voice, saying, big man. And that's when he decides that this is not human, this is not R, it's not good. Spoke again, mimicking when he was saying R, then it was abruptly cut off and went back to camp. It then repeats several phrases in different voices, discussing how cold it is, asking questions like, what was that? And stop fucking with me. And each voice that spoke sounded like it had something lodged in its throat. Mark slowly pokes his head out from underneath the bush, and that's when he sees something sitting against a tree, in the same position that he had been earlier. Its left leg was straight out, while its right leg is at an angle, and its hands are resting behind its head. And for a moment, it could have fooled him into thinking that it was actually R. That's when the figure began to whistle. The creature moves its hands in front of it, almost like Mark was doing with the flashlight, and then it starts to stand up. Mark describes, oh, it was tall. I only weighed 166 pounds and was mostly skin and bone, so when I noted that the thing was skinny, it was an exaggeration. I could see the thin, long, spindly arms were silhouetted against the snow, covering a nearby bush. When it stood, it hunched over. I wasn't sure if it had been slouching, but he certainly did slouch. The being walked a few paces away, and it stood completely up, and it was massive. Mark used to work with stage directions and stage walls that were like 8 feet tall, and he said it could clearly see over that, at least by a foot, so it's about 9 feet tall. It slowly peered around, and he could see that it had no hair and had a really disfigured skull. Its jaw hung down unnaturally and had very unpronounced lips, but it was still kind of hard to see it in the dark. Then it called out with a final garble, R, big man. The sound that Mark says resembled someone in distress. Then it just starts screaming. Mark says that his dad used to take him to air shows a lot as a kid, and this scream reached a pitch and volume that was similar to an F-16 fighter jet. He's frozen in place while the figure continues just peering around, scanning the area. Then it crouches down and leaps onto a branch that's about 15 feet in the air. It just sits there squatting, whistling, and staring off into the distance. Suddenly, it took off. Faster than anything ever could in nature. Mark counts to 10 in his head, the forest goes completely silent, and he finally makes a run for it, avoiding using his flashlight, and he's trying really hard not to make a sound. Before climbing down that hill back to camp, he takes one last look at the woods, and he's just not sure whether what he saw was real or just a figment of his imagination. He's finally back to the relative safety of the fire, where the other members of the group, Y and J, are just waiting for him. They ask him where his wood is, and he just kind of makes up some excuse about it having bugs in it. They're like, okay, whatever, and Mark asks, where's R? They go, check the tent, and he's in there, passed out, asleep, just dead asleep. Mark crawls into his sleeping bag to try and just forget everything and warm back up. And then he hears the scream again. He's thinking, please don't let it come here. And normally when this group would go out camping, Mark would tell them when they heard a noise, like what it was, and he's just silent. He asks if they heard the first scream, and they're like, yeah. They're like, did you see it? And he's like, yep. They're asking what it was. He has no clue. And then he quickly describes it to them so they could listen for any more noises. He's telling them about how it imitated his own voice. They're thinking maybe it's a truck on the highway or an owl, making up pretty much any excuse. Next morning, they went to a walk where Mark had saw the creature, and it hadn't snowed much the night before. The tree he had sat under had scratch marks all over it. area where it was standing before it jumped on the branch had a ton of footprints on it that seemed to have no apparent order to them. It looked like it had run over every square inch of that area, coming very, very close to where Mark had been hiding in that bush. Mark didn't really know anything about cryptids, so when he got home he tried to research it. The closest he could come up to was a Wendigo, but it didn't really have antlers and it just looked very odd shaped in the skull. But that's pretty much the closest we can come to. So yeah, if you hear whistling while in the Appalachian woods, just leave. If you like this kind of stuff, follow for more. If you watched the entire thing, thank you so much for watching. I don't really understand where all this is coming from on TikTok, where they're saying don't whistle yourself in the Appalachian woods. I've grown up here my whole life. I haven't really ever heard that, but I was always told that if I heard whistling or any other kind of weird noises like that, to just kind of leave the area. I know in my last video I said I wanted to try and make one every day, and that was a week ago. I'm still learning on how to find these stories and do research on them in bulk, and it's really hard to find ones that you haven't already heard a million times, especially if you've been into these types of scary, spooky, urban legend types encounter stories from firsthand accounts. You've heard all the usual ones over and over again. So but I really like sharing these that I find that really just freak me out. I'm really desensitized to horror stuff, so if it freaks me out, I'm gonna share it. I want to know what you guys think it was. Let me know down in the comment what your theories are, and don't just say Wendigo, because that's basic. I want to know what other theories there are. Or if you've heard any other scary stories like this, or have your own you want to share, just DM me. I would love to make a video about it.
When I moved into my new apartment, the landlord mentioned the unit above mine was vacant. It was reassuring. No late-night footsteps or loud music to worry about. But every night, around 2 a.m., I heard faint sounds from upstairs. It started with soft footsteps, then the dragging of furniture, and sometimes even muffled voices. I asked the landlord about it, and he assured me again that no one lived there. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I climbed the creaky staircase and found the door slightly ajar. Inside, the apartment was dark and empty, except for a single chair in the center of the room. As I turned to leave, the door slammed shut behind me. A voice whispered, "Now you're the tenant." I'm writing this now, but I don't know if anyone will ever read it. Every night I hear footsteps below me, and I know they're coming closer. The tenant above. When I moved into my new apartment, the landlord mentioned the unit above mine was vacant. It was reassuring. No late-night footsteps or loud music to worry about. But every night around 2 a.m., I heard faint sounds from upstairs. It started with soft footsteps, then the dragging of furniture, and sometimes even muffled voices. I asked the landlord about it, and he assured me again that no one lived there. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I climbed the creaky staircase and found the door slightly ajar. Inside, the apartment was dark and empty, except for a single chair in the center of the room. As I turned to leave, the door slammed shut behind me. A voice whispered, "Now you're the tenant." I'm writing this now, but I don't know if anyone will ever read it. Every night I hear footsteps below me, and I know they're coming closer.
Hey guys, I'm Jenny and this is Shameless Plug. So I want to tell you guys about my Crown of Success manifestation book with easy, simple rituals and spells to manifest a life of abundance in your life. And those spells are so easy, even a child can do it. So this book is filled with different spells that I've learned over the years from my family, passed down from grandma and everything. And also those are spells that I've actually tried and I know that they work. So this book not only teach you step by step on the things that you can do that are so easy that a child can do it, but it tells you like the proper moon phase to use alchemy, manifesting with numbers, numerology, and also the days of the week that best fit for this particular spell. So it tells you the timing of when to practice the spell, the days of the week, the moon phase. It show you all the colors of the candles that you should be using and different planets. So for example, I show you like planet Jupiter is for Thursdays and the hours of the days that you should be doing the spell. So this is an easy road opener spell. So I know a lot of people like to do like different spell work, but if your roads are blocked, of course your spells are not going to work. So it's good to unblock yourself first and then start using the spell, especially with the new years and the new days to come. And also I have some amazing spells in here. This is a powerful quick money spell. So if you're in a bind for some money and you're just trying to get some money, and I even have some easy powerful spell to win game of chance. So if you are a gambler, now I don't promote gambling, but if you are a gambler and you're just trying to make some money and trying to make sure you win, these spells will definitely help you. It tells you the best days to do it. So it says the best days to perform this spell is on a Thursday, Jupiter day. Jupiter is the planet of good fortune, luck, and expansion. Jupiter is the best day to perform spells that boost luck and increase your chance of success in any game of chance or any money spell, period. It has a list of so many spells that you can incorporate in your life with this new year to bring prosperity. And I even put some bonus spells on here, which for Saturday is a day to do like protection work. So I have a spell for like send back to senders. So I put some bonus spells on here, and then a protection with Archangel Michael. So there's so many spells on here. Removing the evil eye spell, so you can remove evil eye in your money and also in your everyday life. New Year home blessing spell, and I know it's been a few days since the new year started, but you can always do a home blessing spell any days of the week. As long as you need it, you could do it. So anyways, guys, this is my book. It's called Crown of Success by Jenny, and it's available on Amazon, the ebook and also the physical copying. So please grab a copy if you're interested in supporting this channel. This is a way to support the channel and to support me as well for putting out, content every day for you guys. So enjoy. So I hope you guys enjoyed this book, and I hope you go and grab your copy, whether it's the ebook or the physical copy. I say have a physical copy, but it's really up to how much, your wallet and what you can afford. So anyways, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye. Mwah. This is a shameless plug, so just check out my channel, okay? Love you guys. Mwah.